Every year past 40, the collagen in your anterior fascial chain loses roughly 1% of its hydration. That number sounds small until you realize what it means in practice. The connective tissue running from your sternum to your forehead is shortening, stiffening, and binding to adjacent layers at a rate that accelerates the longer it goes unaddressed. There is a window of responsiveness in fascial tissue. Crosslinks that form between collagen fibers become more permanent with each passing season of immobility. Press 2 fingers into the notch at the top of your sternum right now. Feel the resistance there, that firmness that doesn't give the way the tissue on your forearm does. That resistance is the adhesion. It's the same adhesion that is, at this moment, pulling the architecture of your face downward from the inside. And I want to be precise about that claim. It's not just your face that's affected. It's every structure along a continuous fascial line that Thomas Myers mapped in his Anatomy Trains work, running from the pubic bone, up through the abdomen, the sternum, the sternocleidomastoid muscles of the neck, over the scalp, and down to the brow ridge. One connected sheet covers the entire front of your body. When the lower portions shorten, the upper portions get dragged down with them. That's a much larger statement than your face is sagging, and the anatomy fully supports it. So here's what we're looking at. 2 models exist for addressing what happens to a face after decades of life. They are fundamentally different in what they target, how they work, and what they leave untouched. Most people encounter the first model at a dermatologist's office or a cosmetic clinic. Botox paralyzes specific muscles to smooth dynamic wrinkles, the lines that form when you squint, frown, or raise your eyebrows. Fillers add volume to areas where fat pads have thinned or shifted. Both are effective at what they do. Neither one is a scam. Wrinkles do smooth. Volume does return. Millions of people walk out of those appointments looking measurably better by every clinical standard the field uses to track outcomes. For the specific problems they target, they deliver consistently and predictably. A structural model offers the second framework. It starts from a completely different premise, that the primary driver of facial change after 40 is not muscle activity or volume loss, but fascial adhesion along the anterior chain. Connective tissue that should glide freely between layers has bound together. Sheets that should slide over each other have become stuck. Dr. Carla Stecco's dissection work at the University of Padua documented exactly this. Fascial layers in cadavers showing densification patterns where hyaluronic acid between the layers had lost its viscosity and essentially glued the surfaces together. A slow, continuous, downward mechanical pull on every structure above the adhesion point is the result. Both models have evidence. Each has practitioners who swear by it. The question is, which one addresses more of what's happening? And the only honest way to answer that is to test both on the same terrain. I spent 8 weeks doing exactly that. Bilateral comparison. One side of my face and neck receiving the standard surface-focused approach. The other side receiving only fascial release work, targeting 4 specific stations along the anterior chain. Sternal notch, SCM attachment at the mastoid process. Next, the angle of the jaw where the masseter meets the fascial layer of the neck. Last, the temporal ridge above the ear. Same person, same genetics, same sleep, same diet. Different interventions. Measured weekly with calipers and photographic reference against a fixed head position using a tripod. The protocol was deliberate. Each side received equal attention in terms of time invested, just directed at completely different tissue layers. Think of the surface model the way you'd think of repainting a car whose frame has been bent in a slow motion collision. Fresh paint covers the panels, correct color, smooth finish, but the doors still don't close flush because the chassis underneath has shifted. An alignment off by millimeters adds up to centimeters, and no amount of surface refinement can override a structural problem at the frame level. That's what happens with the surface model when you look at results over time. Forehead wrinkles smooth, genuinely. Nasolabial folds fill, measurably. But the jawline hasn't changed, nor has the neck. Overall position of the midface relative to the skull hasn't shifted. Improvements are real, but isolated to the zones that received intervention, with zero spillover to the connected structures above and below. Every benefit exists in a silo. Here's where the contrasting data becomes difficult to ignore. For every surface improvement the first model achieved, there was a corresponding measurement on the fascial side that told a different kind of story. Where Botox smoothed the horizontal forehead line, fascial release of the SCM restored 3 millimeters of vertical height at the lateral jaw angle. A measurement that has nothing to do with wrinkles and everything to do with where the tissue sits in space. Fascial work at the sternal notch, meanwhile, reduced forward head posture by a measurable degree. In the under eye area, which I hadn't touched at all on that side, looked less hollow because the tissue was no longer being pulled forward and down. 3 millimeters doesn't sound like much until you see it in a photograph taken at the same angle, same light, same distance, 8 weeks apart. It's the difference between a jawline that reads as defined and one that reads as soft. That second observation stopped me mid-protocol. I was tracking the wrong variable. Let me rephrase that. I was tracking facial measurements, and what I should have been tracking from the start was chain tension. My face wasn't changing because I was working on it directly. It was changing because I was releasing structures 2 feet below it that happened to be connected by a single uninterrupted fascial sheet. Luigi Stecco's research on fascial densification describes the mechanism. Hyaluronic acid that normally lubricates the space between fascial layers undergoes a viscosity change under sustained mechanical load. It becomes sticky. Stiffness follows. Adjacent layers that should slide independently start moving as a single fused unit. Every hour of forward head posture, every year of shallow breathing that fails to expand the thoracic fascia through its full range, every decade of looking down at desks and screens, all of it contributes to a progressive densification that shortens the anterior chain link by link. The process is silent. Pain doesn't signal its arrival. From the outside, nothing visible changes until range of motion has already diminished significantly, or until a photograph reveals that the jawline has migrated lower than the person remembered. And this is where the data gets uncomfortable. Stecco's cadaveric studies showed fascial layer thickness increasing by up to 40% in densified regions compared to healthy tissue. 40% more bulk, occupying space that used to allow glide, creating drag where there should be freedom. But a bent frame isn't quite right for this. What's happening is deeper. It's a seized suspension. A suspension system that has lost its travel, its ability to absorb and distribute force, because the components have rusted into a single rigid unit. When the suspension seizes on one side of a vehicle, the entire chassis drops on that side. Wheel alignment changes, tire wear follows, steering pulls. Everything above the seized point is affected by the restriction below it. Fascia operates the same way. Sternal fascia that densifies and shortens robs the SCM fascia above it of slack. Shortened SCM tissue tightens the facial attachments at the jaw angle. Jaw angle restriction pulls the temporal fascia above the ear into a different resting position. Each station in the chain responds to the one below it. And the face is the last stop on a line that started at the chest. For every measurement I took on the surface treated side that showed localized improvement, the facial side showed distributed improvement. That's the word, distributed. Releasing the sternal notch produced measurable change at the jaw. Work at the jaw produced visible change at the temporal ridge. Benefits weren't confined to the treatment site. They propagated along the chain because the chain is continuous. Contrast that with the surface model. Botox at the forehead produces change at the forehead. Filler at the nasolabial fold produces change at the nasolabial fold. Propagation doesn't happen. Distribution doesn't happen. Each intervention exists in isolation because the model treats the face as a collection of independent sites rather than a connected structure with a single mechanical narrative. And there's a temporal dimension to this contrast worth examining. Surface interventions operate on a depletion cycle. Botox metabolizes in 3 to 4 months, fillers in 6 to 18 months depending on the product and the site. The structural position of the face hasn't changed during that time. The chemical that was masking the position has simply worn off. When you return for the next appointment, you're starting from the same structural baseline, spending the same money, and buying the same temporary result. Fascial release operates on an accumulation cycle. Each session restores a small amount of glide. Over weeks, the cumulative restoration of glide changes the resting position of the tissue. One model requires indefinite repetition to maintain an illusion of structural change. Another model produces incremental structural change that compounds. The math runs in opposite directions. One is a subscription with no equity. The other is a deposit that builds. I want to be fair. Surface treatment is not wrong. It addresses a real layer of the problem. The muscular and volumetric components of facial aging are genuine, well-documented, and responsive to intervention. Dermatologists and cosmetic practitioners are not selling snake oil. They're addressing measurable deficits with tools that work within their scope. My claim is not that Botox fails. The claim is that it succeeds at something incomplete. It treats the paint while the suspension stays seized. Both interventions can coexist. One addresses the surface, another addresses the structure beneath it. But if someone asked me which one to prioritize, which one addresses the deeper mechanical reality, the 8 weeks of bilateral data point in one direction with no ambiguity. A guiding principle emerges from this data, simple enough to carry permanently. Address the architecture before the surface. Whenever a choice exists between treating a consequence and treating a cause, choose the cause. This isn't a rejection of cosmetic care. It's a sequencing decision based on mechanical logic. Surface improvements will often arrive on their own once the structural tension is resolved, because a face that isn't being pulled down from inside simply hangs differently on the skull. Skin that used to drape over compressed, shortened tissue finds itself resting on a longer, more open foundation. The surface didn't change. What the surface was sitting on did. And the release itself follows from this principle. 2 minutes, 4 stations, performed in sequence from lowest to highest because you're restoring slack to the chain from the bottom up. Starting at the top would be like trying to straighten a garden hose by pulling the nozzle while someone stands on the middle. First station, the sternal notch. Place 2 fingers in the soft depression at the top of the sternum. Apply gentle sustained pressure, not massage, not movement, just steady compression for 30 seconds. Tissue will soften under your fingers. That softening is the hyaluronic acid between layers regaining viscosity. You might feel warmth spread beneath your fingertips as circulation returns to tissue that has been compressed. Second station, the SCM. Turn your head slightly to one side. A muscle pops out along the side of your neck, the sternocleidomastoid. Place your thumb and forefinger on it and glide slowly from the collarbone attachment up to behind the ear, taking about 20 seconds per side. Don't squeeze, glide. The pressure should be firm enough to feel the tissue respond, but gentle enough that it never crosses into pain. Third station, the jaw angle. Place your fingertips where the jawbone turns the corner from chin toward ear. Apply sustained pressure into the soft tissue just below the bone for 20 seconds each side. This is the station where most people are surprised by how much tension has accumulated without their awareness. The jaw holds more fascial restriction than almost any other site in the anterior chain. Fourth station, the temporal ridge. Fingertips above the ear where the skull curves, applying gentle upward traction, a slow, sustained lift for 20 seconds each side. Every morning. Order matters, bottom to top. Release the foundation first, and the structure above it has no choice but to respond. Consistency matters more than intensity. 2 minutes daily produces more cumulative change than 20 minutes once a week, because fascial tissue responds to frequency of stimulus, not force. 3 questions will tell you whether fascial adhesion is the primary driver of what's changing in your face. First, when you turn your head fully to one side, do you feel a pull in your chest or collarbone area? That pull is anterior chain tension. Your SCM is transmitting restriction from below. Second, when you open your mouth wide, does your jaw deviate to one side or feel like it catches? Masseter fascial restriction is communicating with the lateral chain. Third, if you press your fingers along your jawline from chin to ear, does the tissue feel dense and immovable rather than soft and pliable? That density is precisely what the release targets. If 2 of 3 are present, the structural layer is almost certainly contributing more to your facial changes than volume loss or muscle activity alone. Surface treatments address a real phenomenon. The fascial work addresses the one underneath it. After releasing a seized suspension, a mechanic doesn't repaint the car first. Alignment is restored, chassis levels, tire wear normalizes. Only then, if the paint is still chipped, does the surface get attention. Sequence is not arbitrary. It follows from the physics of connected systems. Restore the deep architecture. Let the surface settle into its new position. Address what remains. Nobody handed down this principle from a textbook. 8 weeks of measurement, 4 stations, 2 competing models on the same face. Data didn't equivocate. Structural release produced distributed improvement that no surface treatment replicated. Fascial tissue has a window of responsiveness, the same window I mentioned with 2 fingers on a sternum at the beginning of this conversation. And that window narrows with every season of inaction. The people who test this for themselves, who press their own tissue and feel the density, who run their own bilateral experiments even informally, who choose architecture over surface because the evidence demanded it. Those are the people who understand that the deepest kind of care starts below what anyone else can see.